The film begins at night in an orphanage in the city of London. We see the manager of the place going to close the door, but she gets distracted when she sees some magazines on the floor. She picks up the magazines and forgets to close the door. At the same time, we are introduced to a little orphan girl named Sophie. Sophie was sitting on the stairs under her blanket and notices that the manager forgot to close the door, so she goes herself to close it. After that, she goes to play with the clock hands and sets it to 3 a.m. She did this because she was convinced that 3 a.m. is the witching hour. After that, she turns off the light and was heading back, but she hears noises in the street. When she looks, it turns out to be drunken men making a racket. So Sophie tells them, "Quiet down, please. The children here can't sleep. If you don't move from here, I'll call the police." The men get scared and run away, and Sophie returns to her room. We notice a giant shadow appearing in the street, but Sophie doesn't notice it. She enters her room where all the children are sleeping, covers herself with a blanket, puts on her glasses, and turns on a light to read before sleeping. While she's reading, she hears noise again in the street, thinking it's the drunken men, but when she goes to look out the window, it turns out to be some cats playing and knocking over trash cans. While Sophie is watching them, suddenly a giant hand appears and adjusts the trash can. Then the giant appears in full size, towering over the buildings. Sophie sees him and is terrified, retreating to her room, but the giant reaches out, grabs her along with her blanket, and moves through the streets with her. The giant uses some tricks to hide from humans, like pretending to be a street lamp or a tree. He continues on his way, reaching the mountains and effortlessly jumping from one mountain to another until he arrives at his home. He enters his house and hangs Sophie on a tree branch while he starts cutting a giant cucumber. Sophie tries to sneak and escape through the window, but she can't open it because it was too large. By accident, she knocks over a bucket, making a noise, but luckily the giant doesn't hear her. However, because she's nervous, she bumps into other buckets, and this time the giant hears her. He tells her, "You won't be able to escape from here because you don't have wings." He places Sophie in his dish and leaves her there while he continues preparing the dinner he will eat. Sophie asks him, "Where exactly am I?" He tells her, "You are in the land of giants." Sophie doesn't believe him because she thinks there's no such thing. Suddenly, she hears the voices of other giants. Sophie gets scared and pleads with the giant not to eat her. The giant laughs and says, "I don't eat humans." She replies, "But you took me with you and I didn't agree to it." The giant tells her, "Surely your father must be worried about you." Sophie responds, "I don't have a father or mother. You took me from an orphanage, but I didn't like the orphanage because the director of the place is careless and doesn't care about the orphanage. And she was often punished, and the giant sympathizes with her because she is an orphan and is kind to her. He gives her her glasses, and she asks him, "Are all giants as kind as you?" The giant tells her, "No, there are other giants who eat humans." Sophie asks him, "Why did you kidnap me if you don't eat humans?" The giant tells her, "If I had left you, you would have gone and told everyone that you saw one of the giants, and then the humans would have captured me. They would think I'm an animal and lock me up in a cage with the animals." So Sophie tells him, "On the contrary, I won't tell anyone about you." But the giant doesn't believe her and tells her, "You will live with me forever." She replies, "I'm sure I'll find a way to escape." The giant responds to her, "Don't do that." So that none of the other giants would eat you, he places her in a high spot to prevent her from escaping. After that, the giant uses a magnifying glass and reads Sophie's book. Sophie is surprised that he knows how to read. Then she falls asleep while listening to the story from the giant. The giant always goes to his lab, and we learn that this giant makes dreams and nightmares. He can create any dream in the way he wants. He creates a nightmare for Sophie, and she wakes up to find the giant sleeping. She takes advantage of the opportunity and escapes through the window, but a very large giant wakes up, sees her, and catches her. The other giant sees them, and Sophie asks him for help, but he doesn't care about her. The giant throws her into his mouth and eats her. Sophie wakes up from the nightmare, startled, and realizes that the kind giant was the one who made the dream for her. She tells him that he shouldn't have made the dream so scary. He replies, "I intended to make it scary, intended to make you listen to me and not leave the place without my permission because the other giants eat humans." Suddenly, they hear the sound of a giant coming towards them, and the kind giant becomes worried. The other giant, named Fleshlumpeter, who was very large, enters. To the extent that the kind giant seems like a liar to him. Sophie gets scared and hides, and Fleshlumpeter says to the kind giant, "I heard you talking to someone." "Who are you talking to?" "I can smell a human in this place, and if I find them, I'll eat them." The kind giant tries to convince him that there is no human here, while Sophie hides inside the kind giant's cucumber. Flesh Lumpita continues to sniff around for the human scent. The kind giant tells him to eat this cucumber. Flesh Lumpita agrees and almost eats it, but the kind giant sees Sophie is trying to get out of the cucumber, so the kind giant stops him and says, "This cucumber is rotten." Flesh Lumpita drops the cucumber and says, "You are a disgrace to the giant race." He leaves, closes the door, and the kind giant checks on Sophie. Sophie comes out of the cucumber completely dirty, and because he is kind to her, he takes her and bathes her. After that, he places her in front of the fire to dry her quickly. She asks him if he has clothes in her size, and the kind giant has plenty. He lets her choose whatever she wants to wear and goes to prepare the bed where she will sleep. Sophie puts on her new clothes and really likes them. The giant is surprised that she chose that particular outfit, and he takes her to her bed. He was going to hunt dreams, and she kept insisting on going with him and joining him, but he refused because he was afraid that one of the giants might see her. He tells her she must stay here to be safe, and he leaves her and walks away. However, she doesn't stay quiet and follows him. She begs to go with him and tells him, "I never had a best friend before, and you don't have one either, so let's share our secrets and habits. If you're not around and one of the giants enters your house and sees me, they'll eat me immediately, and then my blood will be on your hands." So the giant agrees to take her with him while he hunts dreams, and as they leave the house, the giants were asleep. Sophie and the giant have to walk quietly so as not to wake them. Unfortunately, the giants wake up and grab the giant by his leg. Sophie runs away from them, drops the blanket, and gets into the car to hide. The giants catch the kind giant and ask him, "Where are you going? We need to have some fun with you before you leave." They start tossing him around like a ball, and one of the giants grabs 2 cars, including the one Sophie is in, and climbs up the mountain. On the other side, another giant grabs the kind giant and places him on top of a truck. They try to make the 3 cars crash into each other, but Sophie controls the car and steers it away from the kind giant. The giants grab the kind giant to play with him again, but then it starts to rain. At that moment, the giants run to hide in the caves because they are afraid of water. The kind giant takes Sophie with him in his bag to leave, but then Flesh Lumpita finds Sophie's blanket on the ground. When they smelled it, they realized it was the scent of a human and understood that the kind giant was hiding a human. At night, the kind giant and Sophie arrive at the land of dreams, and he tells Sophie, "I can hear everything here with my big ears. I can hear the ants and the cats talking." Sophie goes down to see the dream tree, and this tree was producing dreams. Sophie was amazed by the whole place. The giant grabs one of the dreams and puts it in his jar, asking Sophie to help him collect the dreams. She agrees and tries to catch any dream, enjoying herself immensely while doing so. She manages to catch a red-colored dream, which was a bad dream, so the giant keeps it in a separate jar. Sophie tells him, "I've decided to name you BFG, meaning Big Friendly Giant," and the giant is delighted with this name. After collecting as many dreams as he can, he and Sophie head to the city. The giant starts listening to each person's heart to give them a suitable dream, and Sophie asks him to blow happy dreams. The giant agrees and blows happy dreams to that family. He tells Sophie about the little boy's dream, where the house phone rings, the father answers, and it turns out the caller was the President of the United States who wanted to talk to the child. A smile appears on the child's face as he sleeps while talking to the president. After the giant finishes his work, they head back to the land of the giants and hide when they see the giants, who had gone down to the city to snatch some children and eat them. Sophie asks him, "Where is my blanket?" The giant is surprised and says, "It was with you." Sophie tells him, "It must have fallen from me in the land of the giants." The giant is shocked because, surely, if the giants find the blanket, and they realize there is a human with me, the giant is afraid to return with Sophie because they will surely eat her. He decides not to take her with him. In the next scene, we see Sophie waking up in front of the orphanage. At first, she thinks it was all a dream, but the giant appears in front of her and tells her it wasn't a dream. "I brought you back because your life is in danger." He begins to explain to her and tells her that a long time ago there was a child living with him. "He was the one who taught me to read, and you wore his jacket, which is why I was moved when I saw you wearing it. Unfortunately, the giants ate that boy, and I don't want that situation to happen to you." Sophie tells him, "Surely if we think about it, we can find a solution to get rid of the giants. but the giant is not convinced and has no hope. He was about to leave her and walk away, but Sophie followed him and said, "I'm not afraid and I want to stay with you." However, the giant does not agree and walks away, and Sophie returns to the orphanage. But she doesn't give up. After a while, she stands on the balcony and senses the giant is near her. She decides to jump off the railing so the giant will save her. Indeed, when she does that, the giant saves her and decides to take her with him because he needs a close friend. They return to the land of the giants, and we notice that Flesh is watching them. After that, they return to the giant's lab, and Sophie is thinking of a plan to get rid of the giants. But suddenly, they hear the sound of the giants coming, so the giant quickly hides Sophie. All the giants enter the house and surround him, saying, "We discovered that you're hiding a human with you." They smell the scent of the blanket. Then they spread out and search for Sophie, destroying the places they look. The giant gets upset that his work is being destroyed, but the giants don't care and continue their search. Every time they got close to Sophie, she would escape and hide in the water because she knows they are afraid of it. The water carries her away and she keeps running continuously to avoid being discovered. The BFG looks at her with a sense of helplessness because he can't defend her. She then reaches the room where the child who lived with the giant used to sleep and sees a picture he drew with the giant. Flesh Lump Peter smells Sophie and was about to catch her, so the kind giant decides to intervene. He lights a fire and scorches the giants, ordering them to leave, and sprays them with water until they all actually leave. Sophie comes out and sees a picture of the Queen of England hanging. An idea came to her mind, and she goes to tell the giant about it. She says, "I want you to make the Queen have a terrifying nightmare that the giants are threatening the lives of children." The giant liked the idea and starts preparing the nightmare. Sophie tells him to add to the nightmare that the 9 giants are attacking England and that the Queen decided to send soldiers to fight the giants, ensuring that you and I will be there. Sophie continues with the plan and tells him that after the Queen wakes up from the nightmare, you will find me patiently waiting for her by her bedroom window, and you will come in and introduce yourself. Although the giant was fearful of the idea of meeting the Queen, he trusts Sophie and agrees. Then he quietly and cautiously sneaks into the Queen's palace without the guards noticing. The giant managed to get Sophie to the Queen's window without anyone noticing and blew the nightmare he created for the Queen. After she dreams of the nightmare, she wakes up startled and her maid Mary comes in to check on her. The Queen tells Mary about the dream she had, where giants were kidnapping children from their homes and eating them. Mary reads today's newspaper and is shocked because it contains news about children disappearing at night in inexplicable ways. The Queen asks Mary to open the curtains, and the Queen is surprised when she sees Sophie standing by the window. She says, "I dreamed of this girl standing here, and a giant brought her here." Sophie tells her, "You're right, and the giant is with me in the garden." When the head servant heard this, he ordered the guards to search the garden. Sophie tells the Queen, "We need you to help us get rid of the giants." The Queen allows her to call the giant with her, and promises that she absolutely won't harm him. The BFG indeed appears and reveals himself, and all the guards raise their weapons in alarm. The Queen orders the guards to stand down immediately, and they lower their weapons, surprised by the giant's presence. The giant bows to the Queen and offers to help her get rid of the 9. The Queen allows the giant to enter the palace so they can have breakfast together. As he enters, a guard watches him to ensure he doesn't break the heirloom. As the BFG enters the room, he bumps into the chandelier and destroys it. Everyone was on edge and afraid of the BFG. They prepare a table and chair for him to sit on, and the guards bring them the finest types of food. The BFG sits down to eat and is very much enjoying the food, saying it's tastier than the cucumbers he used to eat. Sophie was teaching him how to hold a coffee cup, and the BFG drinks it all and spits it out on the guards. After finishing the meal, the army leaders come in, and the Queen explains the current situation to them. She tells them that the BFG will lead them to the land of the giants, where there are 9 giants. These 9 are planning to go out in a few hours to abduct children, and we must stop them. And they all say, "We trust the BFG." Then the BFG sets off for the land of the giants, with the army plane following behind him. The BFG asks them to wait here. He goes back to the lab to prepare nightmares for the giants, so that when they wake up they feel fear, and the soldiers capture them easily. After preparing the nightmares, he and Sophie sit outside. The BFG begins to say goodbye to Sophie. He tells her, "This will be our last day together. Because you don't have a life here, and you don't have humans to live with, and I will always hear your heartbeat. If you call for me at any time, I will come to you." Sophie says goodbye to him and tells him it's time. The BFG gets up to blow the nightmares to the giants, but he discovers that he forgot his trumpet at the Queen's place, and thus the plan is ruined. Because the Queen's palace is about 12 hours away from here, but Sophie decides to handle it herself. She takes the jar of nightmares and goes to the giants. At that moment, Fleshlampeter wakes up, and Sophie doesn't waste time. She breaks the jar, and the nightmares fly out and enter the giants, except for Fleshlampeter because he was the instigator. The giants wake up scared, and Fleshlampeter wants to hit Sophie, but the BFG stops him. Fleshlampeter grabs him, and the BFG tells him to accept it. This is just your end, and Fleshlampeter doesn't really care about what he's saying and was about to hit him, but a military plane grabs him by his hand and leg. They start attacking all the giants and capture them. The giants try to resist and struggle with the army, but to no avail. The military planes captured all of them and flew them away. BFG and Sophie saw what happened and were truly indeed very delighted. The army hurled the giants into the water near an island in the middle of the endless and expansive ocean. The giants quickly got to the island, and the army threw a large amount of cucumbers at them, along with cucumber seeds for them to plant and eat. They got really upset because they absolutely don't like cucumbers and were forced to make it their only food since they had no way to escape. They will spend the rest of their lives on that island in the middle of the water. After some time, Sophie wakes up in the Queen's palace because the Queen decided to adopt her. BFG planted many types of vegetables in the giant's land and lived happily and comfortably.